thanks a lot for the opportunity to speak today. I'm Perrine, PhD student at the University of Strathclyde under the supervision of Damon Corrigan. And together with Aptamer Group, we're trying to develop an Apta sensor for environmental monitoring of antibiotics. No. Yes. So as the previous speaker said, AMR is quite a big topic, and I'm not going to teach you that there's over 1 million people dying, who died, in 2019 directly from it. And it's driven mainly by the misuse and overuse of antibiotics. So bacteria can be exposed to suboptimal concentrations of antibiotics, which end up in the water, in wastewater, into the environment. These antibiotics end up in the wastewater throughout the manufacturing process. Throughout the manufacturing process, or during their use in the community or healthcare facilities, and then when they're being disposed of. So there are reports of antibiotic presence in fresh water, salt water, groundwaters as well. But all those studies use different techniques and process their samples differently, and they look at different analytes. Only as well, a few countries are being looked at, which is making it hard to compare between all those studies. And despite a lot of efforts newly come from various locations throughout the world, there's not consistent monitoring happening throughout time or throughout location. It means that there's not enough knowledge on how antibiotic concentrations impact the transmission of resistance between bacteria and also back to humans. There are indicators that are being developed, such as critical environmental concentrations, potential no-effect concentrations, but because the knowledge is not there yet, it's hard to apply them, and it can vary a lot different between sites. An interesting fact is that over half of the world's active pharmaceutical ingredient production is located in an area where tuberculosis is quite high as well. Yes. So tuberculosis, as you may know, is one of the top 10 global death cause. It's communicable, but we can prevent it and cure it. And over the tens of million people diagnosed every year, almost 500,000 are being diagnosed with rifampicin-resistant tuberculosis, so the first-line treatment. And that's where moxifloxacin comes into play as a second-line treatment. That's why it's part of the watch list of WHO, which are antibiotics with a higher potential for resistance, and they should be key targets of stewardship and monitoring programs. When patients take moxifloxacin, almost half of the dose that they take orally or intravenously is being excreted unchanged, and we would like to avoid the people who are around them to become resistant to that second-line antibiotic as well. I think this has been explained a lot better than I will do before me, but as you can imagine, I'm going to use an aptamer on an electrode to try and detect moxifloxacin. It's actually an aptamer that has been developed by Aptamer Group, which is a smaller sequence than the full aptamer. It appears to be more stable, smaller in size, which gives it a lot more advantages, as you can see here. No, where do I need to aim this? There. So we've worked with Aptamer Group a little bit before, and we've developed an Aptamer-based sensor in a self-assembled monolayer environment for a well-known target now, I think. So we've used BSA as an antifiling agent. We've not labeled the Aptamer, and it appeared that the easiest kind of mixture on the electrode, which was a one pot mixture, sort of, it gave us quite a good difference. No, that's not the one there. Between the positive and the negative reagents. So we thought, okay, it's worth going forward with this. So we've looked at clinical samples, and we could detect a difference between a positive patient sample and a negative patient sample. So back to the moxifloxacin Aptamer. Aptamer group has given us data to prove that it's specific to moxifloxacin, not the other fluoroquinolones, and that it can also be detected at various concentration in various matrices, so plasma, river water, and milk, and others. We've used impedance spectroscopy, and I'm not going to go into details, to reflect the changes happening close to the electrodes. And so we obtain those nyquist plots that have been mentioned before, and we fit that to an electrical circuit, which is supposed to represent the physical chemical properties of our system. So, still not. The signals we get look like this. So we have the bare signal, and then we functionalize it with the capture and an alkane tile on the gold. It goes down, hybridize the Aptamer, it goes a bit up a bit more, and then with moxifloxacin we get quite a big change. And we're looking at the charge transfer resistance in particular, so how easy is it is for electrons to transfer close to the electrode. So if you want an easy one, it's the diameter of the semicircle. So that's most of the work I've been doing is optimizing the biosensing layer. We're using gold and electrodes that were designed in-house in collaboration with Flex Medical. So I have 8 working electrodes on a small chip like this, and it's quite nice for replicate reproduction. So we use the self-assembled monolayer to mimic the biological membrane environments, and we looked at a few different parameters. So how long we functionalize the electrodes for. We're doing everything at ambient temperature. So it appears that almost an hour was enough. Overnight was not giving us a better signal change. And then we've looked at different alkane tile for the monolayer composition. We went from 2 carbons up until 11 different N groups, and the mercaptopropanol, which I might shorten as MCP afterwards, it gave us the best environments, best signal change, best moxifloxacin recognition. We looked at the ratios as well between the Aptamer support and the mercaptopropanol, and the assembly of the system. So when it was best to add our backfill layer, for example, before or after the Aptamer was hybridized, how it was best to assemble the complex, the support with the Aptamer, pre-hybridize it, then putting it down on the electrode, or doing a step-by-step assembly. The step-by-step assembly worked pretty okay. We also looked at the buffer environments, a lot of dilution of it, and simpler ones, for example, BBS, and a diluted version seemed to be the way to go. And then the matrix in which moxifloxacin was exposed to the center. So it was about time to test different concentrations, I think, of the sensor. This is a scale in micromolar. And we obtained a response that looked like this. The fit is not really obvious. So as you can see, I looked really hard. So I looked at if the difference between before and after hybridization, and it needed to be significantly different. And I also looked at the difference between negative controls and positive controls. But we didn't have so many points in that linear region. So I repeated the experiment a little bit more. It didn't quite land where we wanted. So I repeated again. And we have a little bit, oh no, sorry, too fast. It still shows reproducibility between some of the sets, not all of them. So I cleaned up the data set. I said, okay, those two electrodes are quite outliers consistently. The ones on the side where there's no liquid beside them when I incubate them. It didn't still show quite the best fit. So within the range that we consider the working range of the sensor, there was some reproducibility between different data set. Outside, it looked a bit different. So we are thinking of going towards a labeled approach, even if we tried really hard without the label on the Aptamer. We've optimized the sensor for one target. We optimize quite a bit the layer. If you have any other suggestion, I'm all open. And yeah, hopefully we will manage to detect and quantify multiples in more complex matrices. What I really like about the system is that once this is optimized for one aptamer which recognizes one antibiotic, the idea would be to try with different aptamers with that same system, so that we have quite a platform that works well. And we could go towards a multiplex format that would detect different antibiotics at the same time in a similar sample. Well, thanks a lot to my supervisor and the whole lab, Aptamer group as well, and all the other collaborators. Thank you.